All right, guys, welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. This is Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle. Super glad that you're with us, that you're involved in Live Well Coaching. We're just having a ton of time with you guys. And this is Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle. All right, guys, welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. This is Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle. Super glad that you're with us, that you're involved in Live Well Coaching. We're just having a ton of time with you guys and putting together all this content for you. Wellness Wednesdays for the last 3 or 4 weeks has been focused on I decided to do this series because I felt like there's just such a crisis of addiction, and there are people that are struggling all over our country, really all over the world. And what I wanted to do is kind of link the opiate crisis and addiction to alcohol and some of the things that we talk about a lot to some of the more compulsive behaviors that a lot of people don't connect to addiction. So we've talked about alcohol and we've talked about marijuana and drugs, but we're also talking about addiction to people pleasing and work. If you're a workaholic, you know what that's like, right? Addiction to gambling, addiction to pornography, addiction to, just things like high fat, high sugar foods. Those are all wrapped up in the same process. So we have covered so much. And if you haven't looked at some of these other lessons, I really would encourage you to go back and educate yourself and reacquaint yourself with some of the content, because it's incredible when we look at really the stigma of addiction and we look at what's happened in our culture with regard to technology and how that primes our brain for addiction. And today I want to talk a little bit about the need for connection and the need for accountability if you're ever going to maintain your recovery. And so I hope that you found this all very helpful. I hope that as you're moving forward, you always look back to this series on Live Well Coaching as something you can kind of re-educate yourself with, like I said, reacquaint yourself with. And if you start to struggle, man, just look back at these videos and allow yourself to reinvest in sobriety and reinvest in your recovery. And that's the biggest piece, right? So we don't want you white knuckling this. We want you actually enjoying your life. So a piece of that is connection. A piece of real recovery is connection. So I want to tell you a little bit about why peer support matters. So if you think about addiction in general, and especially people that are in recovery from addiction, a lot of us will naturally think, well, okay, what about AA? What about NA? What about SA? What about Smart Recovery? What about things like Celebrate Recovery in churches? And all those things are incredible. And do you know why they work? This might surprise you, but I don't think there's anything that happens at Smart Recovery or AA or Celebrate Recovery that ultimately is like earth-shattering new information. They only have it at AA, and that's why people get better. That's just not true. What they have at AA and other support groups is people. That's it. They have good content, they have great stories, but at the end of the day, what makes people connect to their recovery and link that to the support systems that they get in AA and all these recovery groups is ultimately the relationships that they build. And I'm going to bring you back to the story I told you maybe a session or two ago in Wellness Wednesday of Rat Park. Remember we talked about Rat Park being sort of this groundbreaking experience, I would say, where they put a rat in a box and they had a spigot of water and a spigot of cocaine, right? And almost every rat that they put in the box would drink the water, but at some point it'd try that cocaine water and it would get addicted and die. It'd overdose, just literally get compulsive about the cocaine water. And then they took another rat and they put them in another box. But this box had lots of cool little toys it could run on. Can you see me running on the hamster wheel as a little rat? This is me. It had little tunnels they could fly through and jump through. They had balls they could play with, and a bunch of other cool rats, right? So those rats that they put in that box also had water and cocaine water. Almost every rat tried the cocaine water. Why? Because it was there. They don't know the difference between regular water and cocaine water, but almost no rats got addicted to the cocaine water, and 0 rats got addicted and died and overdosed. And so the method of putting rats in this situation where they had access to people and access to, well, not people, to other rats in relationship, but access to things that felt meaningful and purposeful. That's what mimics the idea of sobriety for us as humans. So the opposite of addiction is not really sobriety. If you look at this study, the opposite of addiction is what? Connection. And so that's what AA has. That's what Celebrate Recovery has. It has meaningful relationships with other people. So I just want to give you some of the stats because I think they're amazing. If you connect in peer support, 40 to 60% of people in recovery will end up finding some connection to a real recovery. And close to that statistics will relapse. So when you think about it, the idea of connecting with people, it doesn't really keep you from relapse. What it does is it keeps you connected in your recovery even when you mess up. So connection to community is the #1 predictor of long-term recovery. So think about that for a minute. If you look at all the research, you look at all the data, connection to community is the #1 predictor of long-term recovery. So they've looked at this with all kinds of different groups. They've looked at it with school-age kids like adolescents and college kids. They've looked at it with people that are partying like rock stars in their 30s and 20s. They've looked at it with veterans in PTSD. And the most effective recovery outcomes were among those people that were involved in peer-supported groups. So I just want to kind of reiterate this idea that at the end of the day, you really have to allow yourself to connect in other people in relationships. That is the goal. That is the key. If there's one thing that I can just sort of keep you focused on as we end this series, I want to focus you on the value of relationships. So can you get those kind of relationships in a peer group? Can you go to AA and find real relationships? Look, there's no doubt that you can. There's a Celebrate Recovery in town here, in the town where I live. And I tell you what, man, it is awesome. It's incredible. The leader is invested. He loves those people. They love each other. It's awesome. But I'm going to say something that's probably a little controversial. You need more for your recovery than just defined, structured groups. That's a great start. It's a great way to get engaged with people that can kind of be on the same page with you and journey with you. But the end game is to put yourself in a position where you're building real relationships with people that are close and connected and that value you and that can journey with you on your path of recovery. And you need specific kinds of people. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what kinds of relationships you need to be building as we finish this series, because this is guys, this is the money shot, right? Like if you can't get this piece in play, you're at risk. I don't care how long you've been sober and clean. If you can't get this piece sort of settled in your life, you're going to be at risk. I mean, one of the good things is supportive, healthy, connected, vulnerable relationships have been proven to be even connected with longevity. Like especially guys that have relationships that are real with other people tend to be happier, healthy people. They live longer. So that's just an aside, honestly, but man, gives us a little bit more motivation to go after this. So what kind of relationships are you looking for? What do you need to build and put in your life in order to begin to really, truly connect with your long-term recovery? Well, you start with relationships that are full of grace, is what I would say. You want relationships that are full of grace. What I mean by that is you've got to connect with people that are not going to judge you for moments where you kind of slip back into the behavior. That's huge, right? So if you're an alcoholic, that's pretty obvious when you relapse, right? You're drinking, you have a drink. But it gets a little bit more difficult when, if you're addicted to high fat, high sugar foods, man, you start just slowly, right? And you start just inching your way towards the old behaviors. So it's not really, I just fall off the wagon one day and I go home and eat a box of Oreos. I mean, obviously that can happen, but it's more just like that slow slide. And that's how relapse happens a lot. There are people that, one drink is too many, 1,000 is never enough. That is something that's real for people, that alcoholics and drug addicts and pornography users, whatever. But in many ways, I feel like that's the exception, not the rule. What happens a lot, what I see, is people that they make little compromises, right? And they have a drink. I'm like, oh, well, hey, nothing happened. Feeling good. That was good. I'm normal. I'm a normal person. I can do this. I'm just like everybody else. And then that negative thoughts begins to take hold in their mind. And then what happens? You know what happens. 2 weeks later, you have another drink. Then 3 weeks after that, you have a couple drinks. And then the slide begins. Then it's 3, then it's 5, then you're back in. You're all in. And that happens with anything. So yeah, you don't go home and just cram a box of Oreos down your throat, but you just, I'll get the full sugar Starbucks just one time. My friend ordered it. He didn't know I didn't like it, or I was trying to stay away from it. And then over time, you just slowly make those compromises. If you connect with people that will be gracious with you, the ability for that person to speak into your life in moments of weakness, in moments of relapse, is huge, right? And if they come at you with judgment, almost always makes things worse. So you need to find people that have the capacity to, even when you mess it up and blow it up and things just aren't going well, that these people can come to you with a posture of grace, and they can come to you with mercy to say, hey, look, you've got this. I'm for you. I know you can do this. And if you find those people that truly have grace, I think what you'll also find is that they have this unique, uncanny ability to speak truth in love. And so that's the second piece that you need to look for in these real relationships that you're creating, that you're fostering, and you're cultivating. Can they speak truth with grace? And so that's a pretty tough, that's a tough one to find, because some people are really good at grace, they're not so good at boundaries. They're not so good at truth. A lot of people that are really good at truth aren't so good at grace. And so as you find that first criteria, man, this person, they don't judge me and they're with me and they're for me. You got to make sure that they're going to be open and honest with you in the big moments. And so, what does that look like? I mean, everybody has their own style, right? And if you're someone who's struggling with someone in addiction right now, you probably try to figure that out all the time. Like, how do I speak the truth in love? And what do I do that would allow me to kind of begin to get growth and recovery back on this person's plate, you know? But the goal is to allow yourself to begin to say, okay, I'm going to draw boundaries with you, and I'm going to allow myself to lean in to this relationship. And the boundary really is, I'm not going to placate you. And so if you're trying to be the accountable person, the accountability partner, the person who speaks the truth in love, you really have to allow yourself to walk in that. And if you're the person who's got the addiction, man, it's so hard because it's the last thing you want in those moments. But your goal really is to put yourself in a position where you can accept that feedback and accept that correction. You've got to get with people that will be real and open and honest with you and draw those boundaries. Now, this is a little bit of an aside, but it's worth saying, if you struggle with boundaries, or you need to even understand what healthy boundaries are, then I would encourage you to go to our next challenge. Livewell's doing a challenge in the next week or so. So if you're watching this live, this is obviously, you might not be doing that because we archive them, but I would encourage you to just check out the Boundaries Challenge. If it's not live, it's probably up there anyways, right? So you can go check it out. But I throw that out there because a lot of people don't understand how to balance truth and love. And so I really want to encourage you to kind of say, okay, what would it look like for me to approach that and be real intentional about it? And that challenge is one way that you can do that. So, all right, you need to understand relationships are huge. If you're going to stay sober, you've got to find healthy relationships. And I'm encouraging you to find healthy relationships outside of those formal support groups, right? Number two, the people that you're looking for are people of grace. They're people that you know, man, come hell or high water, whatever happens to me, these people are in. They're in. They're for me. They're with me. They're not gonna judge me. They're not gonna turn their back on me. They're not gonna be passive aggressive with me and be mad at me because I failed or I messed up or I relapsed. And then you've got to find people that will speak the truth in love. So once you find the gracious people, you need to refine that even more and find the gracious people that'll speak truth. Now, where do you find those people? Because I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of people have is they're like, look, Mike, that's awesome. Great idea. I'd love to have connections with people that'll speak the truth in love with me and hold me accountable. It'd be awesome. They don't exist. And I get that. I'm not naive about this. In our culture, we really don't do this well at all. So I understand how that prospect would feel really overwhelming to you. But I'm going to give you an example biblically that sort of serves as your metaphor for how to find these people. And I'm going to use probably one of the people that you'll be surprised I can appeal to in a talk on addiction, and it's Jesus himself. I do not think Jesus was an addict. However, I do think he had an uncanny ability to put people in his life that were supportive, encouraging, that were truth tellers, that were loyal. They weren't perfect, But man, they had some very specific things that made them kind of worthy of being in his 12, right? So one thing I've always thought was interesting, I'm such a family guy. I mean, I'm just so tied to family. I love it. I love just the idea of family. My experience with family in my life has been awesome. So I'm always going to turn to family. That's just part of my DNA. But it's interesting. You look at Jesus, and he did not turn to his family to be in the 12, did he? It's wild. Who did he turn to? Well, he didn't turn to his neighbors. He didn't turn to, well, this guy grew up next to me. Or this guy, he lives next door, so he's a great accountability partner. He's a great, real relationship. No. He literally hand-picked the guys that he felt could support and love him and affirm him and partner with him and walk with him. And they were the kind of relationships, now remember this, they were the kind of relationships that were mutually burden-bearing. I think that's important. So you look at like the Last Supper, and it's not Jesus walking in. He knows it's the Last Supper, right? He kind of gets it. He knows what's going on. If I'm in that situation, you guys might know me and my character a little bit at this point. I'm sort of playful sometimes. I'd have walked in and be like, hey, let's celebrate. Let's talk about all the amazing things that happened. This guy we healed, and remember this miracle that took place, and oh, Peter, you're amazing, and here's why, and Matthew. That's not what he did. He walked in, and first he washed some people's feet. He was a servant, right? But it didn't stop there. Because what happened next? Wash his feet. It was mutually burden-bearing. And that's the kind of relationships that we need to focus on for our 12. These people that are going to be with us and for us and part of our journey, man. People that are walking with us and not going to leave us, sort of when we mess up or relapse or have a kind of a setback. They're all in. And the way you find those people is you connect with people that are willing to have mutually burden-bearing relationships with you. That means you wash their feet, they wash yours, metaphorically. Now that's a little different. You even think of the AA model, and there's a sponsor and a sponsee. There's sort of this hierarchy, and it is part of what creates the success there. But we need to do this a little different. And as you're seeking out these people that are healthy for you and that will speak truth to you, in love to you, you need to make sure that you're available to speak truth into them and to give them accountability and to give them grace and love. And guys, I think that's what I'll leave you with this whole series. So when you think about everything we've talked about, the stigma, the trauma involved in addiction, just all of it, the real answer is grace and love. And that's why AA, the most powerful support system in I think it's the world, starts their whole path of recovery with the idea that there's a higher power. Because it's understanding that I'm a part of something bigger, and that there is a God that's bigger than me, who loves me, who in spite of all of it, in spite of all the trauma, in spite of all the stigma, in spite of all the failure, in spite of all the moments where, man, I messed that up again, and I hurt these people, and I can't believe I'm looking at pornography again, or I can't believe I'm drinking again, or man, how did I spend that much money at the casino? In spite of all of it, There's a God that's for you and with you, and he chose you, and you're enough. And that grace and mercy, and allowing yourself to experience that grace and mercy, is the very thing that will give you the confidence, the motivation to begin to walk in recovery. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, guys, when we can finally, once and for all, just fully experience the love of God. And that is the key in all of this, is to experience the love of God. And that experience of grace then serves as your template, right? Because that's what motivates you, guides you to go out and find these kind of relationships, these relationships here on earth, that will ultimately give you the kind of accountability and love and connection that you need to maintain sobriety over time. All right, I just, it's sad for me because I feel like there's so much more I want to say. And my pledge to you is we'll keep talking about this on Live Well Coaching. We'll keep talking about addiction. We'll keep talking about how you can lean into it and find true recovery. But for now, I really want to encourage you. Stay on track. Pursue this with everything that's in you. Be the best version of yourself you can possibly be. And in the end, I really do feel like you can live in long-term recovery. You've got this. You've got the capacity to walk forward in a healthy way, to get healthy and stay healthy and live well. All right, guys. We'll see you next Wednesday. Take care.